A news anchor leans forward during what seems like a routine interview. Suddenly, a chair flies across the set. Blood on the floor, cameras shaking, security rushing in. What you're about to see actually happened live on television. Welcome back. Today we're diving into interviews that were supposed to be calm, professional, and respectful. But something went horribly wrong. Each story gets more intense than the last. Some ended with arrests, others with hospitalizations, and one nearly caused an international incident. Stay until the end, because the final interview will leave you speechless. Let's get into it. Björk attacks reporter at Bangkok Airport, February 1996. Bangkok International Airport. Icelandic singer Björk had just landed in Thailand for a concert tour. She was exhausted from the flight. A local TV reporter approached her in the arrivals hall with a camera crew. The reporter smiled and said, "Welcome to Bangkok." Björk smiled back and thanked her. Then the reporter added one more line. "I'm looking forward to your concert, and I hope you'll have a safe stay in Bangkok." Something about that comment triggered Björk instantly. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Within 2 seconds, Björk lunged forward and tackled the reporter to the ground. She started hitting her repeatedly while security tried to pull them apart. The camera kept rolling. The entire time. The footage aired across Asia and eventually went viral worldwide. Björk later explained she felt the reporter's tone was condescending. No charges were filed, but the incident became one of the most replayed celebrity meltdowns in TV history. And this was just the beginning. Because the next interview didn't just end in violence, it ended with someone being attacked on live television. Jim Everett attacks Jim Rome, 1994, a sports talk show called Talk 2. NFL quarterback Jim Everett sat down with host Jim Rome, but there was history here. For months, Rome had been mocking Everett on air, calling him Chris Evert. Chris Evert was a female tennis player. Rome was questioning Everett's toughness. Everett agreed to come on the show to address it directly. He sat down calmly, smiled, shook hands. Rome opened with small talk about the season. Then he did it again. He called him Chris. Everett's face changed immediately. He leaned forward and warned Rome, "Don't say that again." Rome smirked and said it a second time. Everett stood up, flipped the table, and shoved Rome backward out of his chair. The set went silent. Security froze. Rome tried to laugh it off, but his voice was shaking. The clip became legendary in sports media. Rome never apologized. Everett said he had no regrets, and to this day, hosts are more careful about pushing athletes too far. But things were about to get even uglier, because the next guest didn't just flip a table, he threatened to eat someone's children. On camera. Mike Tyson threatens Lennox Lewis, January 2002. New York City, a press conference for an upcoming heavyweight fight. Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. The two sat at opposite ends of a long table with reporters in between. This wasn't technically a TV interview, but it was broadcast live across multiple networks. Lewis had been taunting Tyson for weeks leading up to this moment. At first, Tyson stayed quiet. He stared at the table, barely spoke. Then Lewis made a joke about Tyson's previous losses. Tyson stood up and lunged across the table. He grabbed Lewis by the neck and started swinging. Security couldn't separate them. Tyson bit Lewis on the leg during the scuffle. When they were finally pulled apart, Tyson screamed into the microphone, "I'll fuck you till you love me." Then he added, "I'll eat your children." The room went completely silent. The fight was delayed by months. Tyson was fined heavily, but the press conference became more famous than the actual fight, and it set a new standard for how chaotic live sports media could get. Still, we're only halfway through, because the next interview ended with someone pulling a weapon on set. Richard Bey Show brawl with knife pulled mid-1990s. The Richard Bey Show, a daytime talk show known for controversial topics. This episode was titled, "You Slept With My Man." 3 women and 2 men were brought on stage. The setup was simple: accusations of cheating and betrayal. At first, it was just shouting, standard talk show drama. Then one woman stood up and got in another's face. A punch was thrown. Then another. Security rushed the stage but couldn't contain it. One of the women reached into her jacket and pulled out a small knife. The audience screamed. Richard Bay dove behind his desk. Cameras kept rolling as security tackled her to the ground. The knife was knocked away and she was dragged off stage. The episode never aired in full. Clips were shown on news programs as an example of trash TV gone too far. Several guests were arrested. The show was eventually canceled a few years later. But the chaos didn't stop there, because the next incident involved two professional fighters, and it turned into an all-out brawl. Vitaly Klitschko versus Derek Chisora brawl. February 2012. Munich, Germany. Heavyweight boxer Derek Chisora had just lost a fight to Vladimir Klitschko. After the fight, a press conference was held. Vladimir's brother, Vitaly Klitschko, attended to support him. Vitaly was retired at the time. Chisora was visibly upset about the loss. He started insulting the Klitschko family during the press event. Vitaly stepped in to defend his brother's honor. Chisora stood up and slapped Vitaly across the face. Vitaly immediately swung back. Within seconds, both men were throwing punches. Chairs were knocked over. Reporters scattered. Security struggled to break them apart. One cameraman was hit in the crossfire and had to be treated for a head injury. Chisora was fined and temporarily suspended. Vitaly walked away with no punishment. But the footage went viral and became one of boxing's most chaotic press moments. And we're not done yet, because the next host intentionally started riots on his own show. Morton Downey Jr. nearly starts riot late 1980s. The Morton Downey Jr. Show. Morton Downey Jr. was known for confrontational interviews. He would yell, insult, and provoke his guests on purpose. This episode featured activists from both sides of the abortion debate. Tensions were already high before the show even started. Downey opened by screaming at one of the pro-choice guests. She screamed back. The audience started chanting and booing. One guest stood up and threw a glass of water at another. That triggered a chain reaction. Audience members jumped onto the stage. Punches were thrown in every direction. Downey tried to restore order but was shoved backward. Security flooded the stage. The cameras kept rolling for nearly 2 full minutes of chaos. The episode aired with minimal edits. Ratings spiked. But the controversy led to increased scrutiny of the show. It was canceled a year later after Downey fabricated a hate crime against himself. But the chaos didn't stop with American TV, because the next incident happened in front of an audience of millions, and it ended someone's career. Permanently. Will Smith slaps Chris Rock at the Oscars March 2022, the 94th Academy Awards. Chris Rock was presenting an award during the Oscars ceremony. He made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head. Jada has alopecia, a condition that causes hair loss. Will Smith was sitting in the front row with her. At first, he laughed at the joke, but then he saw Jada's face. She rolled her eyes and looked hurt. Will Smith stood up, walked calmly onto the stage, and slapped Chris Rock across the face. The slap echoed through the theater. Rock stumbled backward but stayed on his feet. Smith walked back to his seat and shouted, "Keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth." The audience sat in stunned silence. Some thought it was scripted, but Rock's reaction made it clear it wasn't. He tried to continue presenting but was visibly shaken. Will Smith won Best Actor less than an hour later. He apologized during his acceptance speech, but the damage was done. He was banned from the Oscars for 10 years. Several film projects were canceled, and the slap became the most talked about moment in Oscar history. But even that wasn't the wildest interview meltdown ever captured, because the final story involves a live execution threat. On national television, journalist held at gunpoint during live broadcast, January 2024. Guayaquil, Ecuador. Journalist José Luis Calderón was hosting a live news program on TC television. Everything seemed normal. He was reading the day's headlines. Suddenly, armed men stormed the studio. They were wearing masks and carrying rifles. Calderon raised his hands immediately. The camera kept broadcasting. The gunman forced the crew to the floor. One pointed a rifle directly at Calderon's head. For several minutes, the broadcast continued live. Viewers across Ecuador watched in horror. Police surrounded the building. The gunmen realized they were trapped. Eventually, they surrendered without firing a shot. All the gunmen were arrested. Calderon was unharmed but visibly traumatized. The incident was linked to gang violence in Ecuador. It became one of the most terrifying live TV moments ever recorded, and it proved that even in 2024, live television can spiral into total chaos in seconds. From celebrity meltdowns to life-threatening situations, these interviews started calm and ended in absolute mayhem. Some were caused by insults, others by exhaustion or anger, but all of them were captured live for the world to see. Here's my question for you. Which interview shocked you the most? Was it Björk's airport attack, Tyson's wild threats, or the gunman storming a live newsroom? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe for more shocking stories like this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.